Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most incredible stories from Hindu mythology, the Samudra Manthan, which literally means the churning of the ocean. It's an absolutely epic quest for immortality.
So just think about that for a second. What if the one thing you needed most was at the bottom of the ocean, and the only way to get it was to, well, churn the whole thing like a giant cosmic smoothie? That's the mind-boggling problem facing the gods, the Devas, in this story. They desperately need Amrita, the nectar of immortality, to get a leg up on their rivals, the Asuras.
So their solution, it's got to be one of the most audacious, most over-the-top plans in all of mythology. They're going to churn the entire ocean of milk. But, how do you even begin to do that? You're going to need some seriously big tools.
Okay, so this was not a simple to-do list. This was a cosmic heist that required some pretty intense negotiations. First, they had to convince the enormous Mount Mandara to let itself be uprooted to act as the churning rod. Then they had to talk the ocean itself into, just bearing with the whole violent process. And finally, they needed a pivot point. So they asked the mighty Tortoise King to hold the entire mountain on his back to stop it from just sinking straight to the bottom.
But here's the real kicker. This whole plan was so massive, so completely impossible for them to pull off by themselves, that the gods had to do the unthinkable. They had to form a fragile and frankly very dangerous partnership with their sworn enemies, the Asuras.
And so, there it is. An uneasy alliance is formed. The Devas and the Asuras, rivals for ages, agree to work together to churn the ocean for the one prize they both desperately crave. You can see right from the very beginning that this partnership is, well, it's a little one-sided. The Devas very cleverly chose to hold the serpent Vasuki by his tail. This meant the Asuras were stuck holding his head. So as they start pulling back and forth, what happens? Flames and choking smoke pour out of Vasuki's mouth, blasting the Asuras, while the clouds that form from all that smoke drop cool, refreshing rain right on the Devas. Talk about a raw deal. And the process itself? It was an act of creation, sure, but it came with so much destruction. A roar like the end of the world came from the sea. Countless fish and other sea creatures were crushed by the giant mountain. The friction from the trees on Mandara's slopes caused them to burst into flames. And all the animals living there, well, they were immolated. The entire ocean was turned into this chaotic, fiery vortex.
After a long time of this, with absolutely no sign of the nectar, everyone is just exhausted. The gods can barely go on. They're spent, their strength is completely gone, and they go to the creator god Brahma, basically to admit defeat. But just when it seems like all hope is lost, there's a divine intervention. The great god Narayana, who is an aspect of Vishnu the Preserver, sees what's happening. He infuses the Devas with his own divine energy, telling them to get back in there and churn again with all their might. And you know what? That divine pep talk worked immediately. As soon as they start churning with this renewed strength, incredible, miraculous treasures begin to rise up from the depths. One by one, these amazing things just appear. First, the soft, glowing moon. Then, the goddess Lakshmi herself. She's followed by a magnificent white horse that's as fast as thought, and then the incredible celestial ruby, Kaustubha. Each treasure is claimed by the gods, and you can just feel the anticipation building for that final prize.
And then, finally, the moment arrives. The divine physician, Dhanvantari, literally rises from the waves. And in his hands, he's holding a pale chalice. And inside that chalice is the very thing they've been fighting for, the Amrita.
But just as it seems like victory is theirs, the ocean, and all its agony from the churning, has one last horrifying surprise in store for them. At first, it's just this dark smoke staining the waves black. But as they keep churning, both the gods and the demons start to realize that something far, far worse than any monster is coming to the surface, a danger that could actually consume every single one of them. This thing was called Kalakutta, and it was a world-ending poison. Its fumes were so toxic they started to basically stupefy the three worlds, heaven, earth, and the underworld. It threatened to undo creation itself and wipe out all life. So, to save everything, Lord Shiva performs the ultimate sacrifice. He gathers up all of this terrifying poison and drinks it down, holding it in his throat. The Kalakutta was so powerful it permanently burned his throat blue, and from that day on, he was known as Nilakanta, the one with the blue throat.
Whew. Okay, so with the universe saved, everyone's attention snaps right back to the Amrita. But the Asuras, who've watched all these other amazing treasures go to the gods, are not about to lose the main prize. It was time for them to make their move. In all the chaos, the Asuras roar, "It is ours," and snatch the nectar right out of Dhanvantari's hands. A final, desperate, all-out battle seems totally inevitable. But Narayana, he's got one last plan. And it's one that relies on cleverness, not conflict. He decides to use his Maya, his incredible feminine power of illusion. And just like that, he transforms into Mohini, this enchanting woman whose beauty was so profound, so absolutely irresistible, that it was said she could arouse anyone past reason. And the Asuras, well, they are completely mesmerized. They're so taken by her beauty and her flirting that they totally forget about the nectar. They're so enchanted, in fact, that they just willingly hand over the very prize they had just fought so hard for, tricked not by force, but by a divine, beautiful illusion. And so, the gods got what they wanted. They secured immortality and distributed the Amrita among themselves. But that final act of deception, it cemented the bitter rivalry between the Devas and Asuras for all time. And it leaves us wondering, what's the true cost of a victory won like that?